The wind howled through the desolate landscape, carrying with it an eerie sense of foreboding as Mark's car sputtered to a stop at the abandoned gas station. The flickering fluorescent lights barely illuminated the cracked pavement, casting long, menacing shadows that danced in the cold night. Mark cursed under his breath, realizing he was miles away from the nearest town with an empty gas tank and no cell phone signal. Reluctantly, he pushed open the rusty door to the gas station's convenience store, the hinges creaking in protest. The air inside was stale and heavy, filled with the stench of decay and neglect. Shelves lined with dusty, expired goods stood as silent witnesses to the station's long-forgotten past. As Mark scanned the dimly lit aisles for any sign of life, a sudden chill ran down his spine. He felt a pair of eyes watching him from the shadows. He dismissed it as his imagination playing tricks on him and headed towards the flickering neon sign that read restrooms in fading red letters. As he entered, the door groaned behind him, and Mark caught a glimpse of a figure in his peripheral vision. A tall, shadowy silhouette lingered by the entrance. Mark's heart raced as he fumbled to lock the door. The figure's presence seemed to grow, casting a suffocating darkness over the small restroom. Mark hesitated, torn between calling out and staying silent. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face obscured by shadows and a glint of malice in the eyes. The stranger wore tattered clothing that clung to a slender frame, an unsettling contrast to the menacing aura that surrounded him. A low, guttural voice cut through the silence, sending shivers down Mark's spine. "You shouldn't have come here," the stranger hissed, their tone dripping with malevolence. Mark's mind raced, searching for an escape route. Panic set in as he realized the restroom had no window, no way for him to signal for help. The stranger advanced, revealing a gleaming knife in his hand. The cold, hard metal reflected the dim light, and Mark's breath caught in his throat. "Please," Mark pleaded, his voice trembling. "I won't tell anyone. Just let me go." The stranger lip curled into a sinister smile, and the dim light revealed a face twisted by madness. "It's too late for that," he whispered. The room seemed to close in on Mark as the stranger approached, the knife glinting ominously. Desperation fueled Mark's fight for survival as he tried to reason with his captor. But reason had no place in the madness that gripped the gas station. Time blurred into a nightmarish sequence of fear and despair. The stranger toyed with Mark, reveling in the terror that painted his face. Each passing moment felt like an eternity as Mark's pleas fell on deaf ears. In the final, chilling moments, Mark's body slumped against the tiled wall, blood staining the cold surface. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows over the lifeless scene, and the desolate gas station returned to its silence. The wind outside carried Mark's final screams into the darkness, a haunting echo of the horror that unfolded within the abandoned walls. The murderer vanished into the night, leaving the gas station behind. The night was dense with an inky blackness that seemed to swallow everything in its path. The moon, shrouded by thick clouds, cast feeble shadows that danced eerily across the desolate highway. I had been driving for hours, the hum of the engine the only company in the silent darkness. As my gas gauge flirted with the ominous E, I began to worry. The next town was still miles away, and anxiety knotted in my stomach like a serpent tightening its grip. That's when I saw it, a dim glow in the distance. The neon sign of a gas station flickered like a distant lighthouse, promising refuge from the encroaching night. Relief washed over me as I pulled into the small gas station. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline, and the flickering lights above buzzed like restless insects. I parked by the pumps, the silence of the night broken only by the soft hum of electricity and the occasional creaking of the old sign. Stepping out of my car, I surveyed the surroundings. The gas station seemed frozen in time, a relic from the past. The paint on the walls was chipped, and the windows were streaked with a film of grime that distorted the view inside. A solitary figure stood behind the counter, bathed in the dull light of a flickering fluorescent bulb. As I approached, the bell above the door jingled, and the figure turned to face me. His face was withered, the lines etched by years of solitude. A name tag on his faded uniform read Walter. "Evening," he muttered, his voice a low rasp that seemed to echo through the empty station. I nodded in response, my unease growing with each passing second. Something about Walter's demeanor sent shivers down my spine, but I dismissed it as the result of a long, tiring drive. "Need gas?" he asked, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that bordered on unsettling. "Yeah, and maybe a bit of direction." "How far to the next town?" I replied, trying to sound casual. Walter's eyes flickered towards the window, his gaze lost in the darkness beyond. "Town's a fair distance away." "You planning on staying the night?" The question hung in the air, pregnant with a strange foreboding. I hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, I suppose I might as well." Walter's lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Well, you're in luck. Got a room out back. Real cozy." With a wary nod, I handed him my credit card, and he processed the transaction with a speed that left me uneasy. The bell above the door jingled again, and I pocketed the card, glancing around the dimly lit convenience store. Shelves lined with dusty snacks and expired goods, a flickering row of fluorescent lights, and the distant hum of a malfunctioning refrigerator created a sinister ambience that clung to the air. Walter handed me the receipt, his fingers cold and clammy. "Rooms out back. Enjoy your stay." I mumbled a thanks and headed towards the door at the back of the store. The corridor beyond was dimly lit, the flickering lights casting erratic shadows on the peeling wallpaper. I reached the end of the corridor, and as the door creaked open, a chill swept over me. The room was small, the air thick with the musty scent of neglect. A single bed with worn-out sheets dominated the space, and a cracked mirror hung on the opposite wall. The flickering light bulb above cast a sickly glow that painted the room in eerie shades of yellow. I unpacked my bag and tried to shake off the unease settling in the pit of my stomach. Exhaustion clung to my bones, and the bed seemed inviting despite its shabby appearance. I lay down, the creaking mattress groaning beneath my weight. As sleep began to pull me into its grasp, a sound echoed through the stillness of the night. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails gently rapping on the window. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to the wind or some nocturnal creature. But as the tapping persisted, a knot of dread tightened in my chest. I pulled myself out of bed, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, guiding me towards the window. I hesitated for a moment before pulling back the tattered curtain. My breath caught in my throat. There, on the other side of the glass, stood Walter. His face was contorted into a grotesque grin, his eyes wide and manic. He tapped on the window with yellowed, elongated fingers, the nails sharp and menacing. Panic seized me, and I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. How had he reached the window without making a sound? And why was he tapping on my window in the dead of night? I fumbled for my phone, my trembling fingers struggling to dial the number for the front desk. The phone rang, each tone echoing through the room like a funeral dirge. No answer. I tried again, the tapping outside growing more frenzied. Desperation set in as I grabbed my keys and bolted for the door. The corridor outside was even darker now, the flickering lights casting long, ominous shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. The air felt charged with a malevolence that clung to my skin. I burst through the door, the night air biting at my face. The gas station was eerily quiet, the hum of electricity and the distant drone of the highway the only sounds. I scanned the area, my eyes darting from one shadow to the next. Walter was nowhere in sight. A cold wind whispered through the desolation, and I hesitated. Should I run for my car? Should I confront him? The unanswered questions hung in the air like a spectral fog. As I approached the pumps, I noticed something odd. The gas nozzle was suspended mid-air, dripping with a viscous, black liquid that oozed like tar. The stench was overwhelming, a putrid odor that made my stomach churn. I recoiled, the reality of the situation sinking in. This wasn't a normal gas station, and Walter wasn't a normal attendant. Fear clawed at my throat as I turned towards the convenience store, my eyes widening in horror. The lights inside flickered violently, casting the interior into a disorienting strobe effect. The shelves of expired snacks seemed to leer at me, their contents now grotesque and deformed. The air pulsed with a malevolent energy that seemed to seep from every crack and crevice. I stumbled back, my mind reeling with a primal instinct to escape. The tapping resumed, now a cacophony of eerie rhythms that echoed through the night. I turned towards the road, my footsteps quickening into a sprint. As I reached my car, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of the gas station, leaving the nightmare behind me. The night was pitch black, with only the dim glow of a flickering gas station sign cutting through the darkness. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the distant howling of the wind. Jake and his friend, John, were on a road trip through the desolate countryside, miles away from the nearest town. They had been driving for hours when John's tired eyes caught sight of the dimly lit gas station on the side of the road. Relieved to find a place to refuel, Jake pulled into the desolate gas station. The ancient pump groaned as he filled the tank, and the only sound was the rhythmic thud of the nozzle. The air was heavy with an unsettling stillness, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast long, ominous shadows. As Jake finished filling the tank, a distant rumble of thunder echoed through the night, signaling an approaching storm. Unease settled over him, but he shook it off his nerves. The wind picked up, and the gas station creaked and moaned under its force. Suddenly, a blinding flash of lightning illuminated the scene, revealing the desolation that surrounded them. Just as Jake was about to finish up, the heavens unleashed their fury. Rain poured in sheets, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The gas station, once a faint beacon in the dark, now felt like an isolated island in a sea of blackness. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere thickened with an unspoken dread. Just as the storm reached its peak, a screeching sound sliced through the howling wind. Headlights appeared out of nowhere, illuminating the gas station in an eerie glow. A car careened into the station, crashing into the pump with a sickening crunch. Jake's heart pounded as he stumbled backward, the gas nozzle slipping from his hands. The damaged car's engine sputtered and died, leaving only the haunting echoes of the collision. Panic set in as Jake rushed toward the wrecked vehicle. Inside, John groaned in pain, blood streaming down his face. The front of the car was mangled, trapping John in a twisted metal cage. Desperation filled his eyes as he pleaded for help. "We need to call for help." Jake shouted over the storm, searching for a phone. But the gas station was deserted, devoid of life. The flickering lights cast distorted shadows that danced eerily across the cracked pavement. Frantically, Jake scanned the desolate landscape, hoping to spot a house or any sign of civilization. The rain pelted down relentlessly, and the wind seemed to carry whispers of despair. John's cries for help grew weaker, fading into the symphony of the storm. Alone in the darkness, Jake realized that the gas station was not a sanctuary but a trap. The howling wind and relentless rain masked John's pleas, swallowed by the desolation that surrounded them. As the storm raged on, the gas station became a ghostly outpost, a haunting reminder of the horrors that unfolded on that desolate night.